Lightspeed LEGO U Set 75395, Day 1. Hello fellow builders, and welcome to the 3rd annual LEGO Star Wars Advent Calendar series, now with the code of Lizard Paint. It just made sense to slap these two together. But without further yapping, let's jump into today's build, which is a little X-Wing. But not just any X-Wing, but a micro version of the classic 1999 set. No doubt in honor of the 25th anniversary of LEGO Star Wars, and while I love the idea, I don't think the execution is quite there. LEGO's included plenty of X-Wings in their past Advent calendars, and I frankly prefer every single one of them over this one. Now maybe this is intentionally worse like the classic sets tend to be compared to new ones, but that seems way too meta for LEGO, and it's still not really an excuse to include a weaker build. Still, this is by no means bad, and can at least do the bare minimum of being able to spread the S-foils into attack position. But honestly, I think a recolor of the previous version would have sufficed. Though I do commend the effort of trying something new. 6 out of 10. Day 2. Today's gift is Princess Leia in an adorable Hoth-themed sweater with a cup of hot cocoa. And she's great. They've even managed to make the white printing actually white. Good job. Now just please continue to be consistent with it. I know you won't, but one can dream. This is also my first ever copy of the new iteration of the Cinnabon hairpiece, and it is as marvelous as I'd hoped. These exclusive figures have almost always been my favorite part of these calendars, and she'll make a fine addition to my Christmas-themed Star Wars figure collection. 8 out of 10. Day 3. The build of the day is a mini TIE fighter, but just like the first day's X-Wing, it's not just any TIE, but a micro version of the classic 2001 set. However, unlike the X-Wing, this one's pretty good, or at least as good as most of the previous ones, since the build is basically identical, just this time with the classic blue color scheme. One thing I really would have liked to see here though is the printed windscreen piece included in the light cruiser and trenchant diorama sets. Other than that, there's really not that much more to it, it's just a cute little tie. 7 out of 10. Day 4. Today brings us another figure, a Super Battle Droid. A figure that was just reintroduced earlier this year in the Clones and Droids Battle Pack. Now, usually I'm not the biggest fan of droids being included in these calendars, but since Super Battle Droid hadn't been seen for 9 years, I'm actually cool with this. And the figure itself is pretty great, and in my opinion, a major upgrade over the previous design. I mean, the changes are fairly small, but that doesn't make them insignificant. The legs and arms are practically identical, however the torso has seen some updates, with the narrower, more movie-accurate head and the inclusion of the red sensor. Unfortunately not as a print, but instead as an indent in the mold. This is probably as good as LEGO's B2s are ever gonna get, and I for one am perfectly fine with that. 7.5 out of 10. Day 5. Today's gift is a pretty decent mini AT-AT, and while not obviously based on any specific set, we can just pretend it's based on the original 2003 version to keep with the trend of micro remakes of classic sets. Though based on some of the builds coming up later in the series, it seems that trend is not going to last. Also, I just want to point out how well the original AT-AT holds up, because it's pretty damn good. Anyway, this micro AT-AT is fine enough, and probably the best calendar one so far. I'm not the biggest fan of the head though, a commonality they all share, and some suggestion of the chin cannons would have been nice. The only thing the very first one actually got right. The rest of the body is quite good, however, and it also has a great range of motion for its size, with the head being able to look up and down as well as roll from side to side, and the legs being very adjustable too. 7 out of 10. Day 6. The gift of the day is a mini Y-Wing, which we can once again pretend is a remake of the original 1999 set, even though there are no clear signs of that. I really just want to talk a little about the classics, and this one, unlike yesterday's AT-AT, is pretty bad, honestly. And while bad is a strong word to use about today's micro build, it's definitely not as good as it could have been, and I think the previous version was significantly better, just like with the X-Wing. And again, I do appreciate the avoidance of repeating old builds, something LEGO actually used to do, but if you're gonna redesign something, at least make it as good, preferably better. And this one unfortunately just really isn't. 5 out of 10. Day 7. Today brings us something that I'm honestly shocked hasn't been included in a calendar before. A mini kit. Finally, after 13 years of these calendars, this icon of a build is here, and it's glorious, cause why wouldn't it be? Now technically, the classic in-game model is impossible to build on the account that the lever rests upon a vertical clip piece, and so when they made the Skywalker Saga, they slightly redesigned it and replaced the clip with a simple 1x2 plate. Now I think that a rounded 1x2 would have worked a bit better, but as it is, it still works just fine. This build is also missing the round inverted tile from the bottom.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
9 out of 10. Day 8. Today's gift definitively ends the half-made-up trend of micro remakes of classic sets, with a really good mini sail barge. Cause I wouldn't consider the 2006 set a classic the same way I'd consider the original X-Wing, for example. I'd say the cutoff would be 2004, 2005, or when LEGO started using the Nougat skin tone for the figures. But anyway, like I said, this micro sail barge is pretty fantastic, and a major upgrade upon the previous calendar build from 2015. I especially love the use of those wedged slopes. Now this is how you do an update. Great job. 8 out of 10. Day 9. The build of the day is a pretty good Mini Millennium Falcon. Why'd the 2000s version bubble on the screen there? I thought we were done with that. but god do I want that set for just how damn weird it is. Moving on, this Micro Falcon is about on par with all the previous ones. They've all been relatively similar since the beginning, with the exception of the 2020 version, which honestly might be my favorite for how well it captures the actual proportions of the ship. This one just feels a tad too elongated, and the cockpit here is way too far forward. It's still not bad by any means, and I actually really like the glow of the thrusters, but it could have been a lot better. 6.5 out of 10. Day 10. Today brings us our third figure of the calendar, Ahsoka Tano from the Ahsoka series. And as much as I despise that damned show, that does not detract from the fact that this figure is really good. This is the outfit she dons at the beginning of the show before being reborn as Ahsoka the White, and also the exact same figure that appeared in the T6 shuttle from last year. And like I said, it's a great figure. The graphic design work is just fantastic all around. The only gripe I really have is that the opacity of the orange print on our back is a bit low, and definitely needed a layer or two more paint. Also, I really wish LEGO started using the 3 long bar piece for the shorter blades of some of the characters' lightsabers, like Yoda's, or in this case, one of Ahsoka's. 8.5 out of 10. Day 11. Today's build is a tiny Venator-class Republic attack cruiser, and it's pretty good. I'd say about on par with the previous and only other calendar version. With that one though, I do prefer the clear division of the bridge with the use of binocular piece, while the rest of this one is probably overall a bit better, except for one other thing, the dent in the nose. That's not a thing on the actual ship, so I don't know why they left it so obvious. At least this one has a divider between the thrusters, something the last one knew absolutely nothing about. 7.5 out of 10. Day 12. The gift of the day is Palpatine's shuttle from the end of Revenge of the Sith, the Theta-class T2C shuttle, a ship that has only ever been depicted twice before by LEGO, once in 2010 as a proper playset and as a foil pack in 2016, both being quite good actually. This one, on the other hand, is okay at best. At the very least, it's instantly recognizable as long as you're aware of this relatively obscure ship's existence, however the proportions of it are way out of whack, and it can't even be placed into a half-decent looking landing bows. There was a chance here to make a really cool mini version of one of my favorite Glub shuttles, but it just wasn't realized to its full potential, kinda like with last year's Lambda shuttle. 5 out of 10. Day 13. Today brings us a mini T6 Jedi shuttle, the first of its kind as an advent calendar build, and just like with last year's Playscale version, it has one major problem. The underside is completely unfinished. Now it's obviously not as offensive here as it was on the actual set, but it's still not great. Doubly so since the build we got is really good on the presentable side. The color choice though is also quite interesting, as based on the pattern it appears to be the one from the Ahsoka show, which of course leaned towards more of a dark red light gray combo rather than the white and red we see here, but that's honestly not that big a deal. 6 out of 10. Day 14. Be honest with me. Did you actually recognize today's build without having to look it up? Because while I did, because I'm me, this was the first time I actually had to make sure I was right, which I was. It's a Comrade-class fighter transport, or a Gauntlet starfighter, or a Mandalorian starfighter, anyway, this thing. And it's also the first build of the calendar that I think is just straight up bad. The only thing I'm willing to give it is that it kind of resembles the ship it's trying to be. Like, the more I look at it, the more I can be like, yeah, I see what they were going for. And they also failed miserably. 2 out of 10. Day 15. Today's gift is our fourth figure of the calendar, a 501st Legion clone trooper, the exact same figure that appeared twice in the Bark Speeder Escape from earlier this year, and he's perfectly good. Some suggestion of the blue shoulder armor would be nice, whether it be in the form of dual-modded arms or a print, but that's never been a standard for basic troopers, so I'll continue to let it slide. The 501st helmet is also one of the few modern clone helmets I basically have zero issues with, unlike last year's 212 for example. Embarrassing. 8 out of 10. Day 16. The build of the day, the Micro Ghost, has me very conflicted. My initial reaction was that it was easily one of the best builds of this year, but the more I've looked at it, the more I have problems with it. Number one being the main thrusters, which I feel were far better represented on the 2017 version. The shaping of the hull also feels off to me, like it's almost there, but not quite. The cockpit of the ship is also way too high, and I think discarding the bracket and instead placing the main dome on level with the hull would have been a better solution. It's still a relatively decent build, but it could have been better. 6.5 out of 10. Day 17. Today brings us second obligatory Christmas-themed figure of the calendar, Luke in an ugly Christmas sweater. This one depicting Tatooine with the Lars homestead and a sandcrawler, and he's a great figure, just like Leia from Day 2. Unfortunately, the details here don't really extend beyond the torso print either, but since this Luke is based on Return of the Jedi, the plain black pants make perfect sense. It's also nice to get that new hairpiece again. He too will make a fine addition to my Christmas-themed Star Wars figure collection. 8 out of 10. Day 18. Today's build is a mini U-Wing, surprisingly the first of its kind as a calendar build, and unfortunately it's not very good. While it is recognizable due to the ship's unique shape, it is way too wide for its size, and honestly the fix for that might be as simple as replacing the wedges with regular plates. The main fuselage would still feel a bit too short, and the nose definitely needs more shape. The main function of the ship is also missing, with the troop transport section being nowhere in sight. The build is not without its merits though, as those thrusters of hers, as simple as they are quite nice, but not enough to save it from a 5 out of 10. Day 19. The The build of the day is a mini Yoda's Jedi Starfighter, and it's pretty good, surprisingly enough. I mean, it looks pretty goofy, but have you seen the actual ship? Because it is goofy. It's basically a TIE, but with tiny modified Jedi Interceptor wings, and I've never particularly liked it. I just think it looks stupid, and hot take maybe, I don't think Yoda should have his own starfighter. A lightsaber, of course, that complaint is dumb, but a starfighter? No, I don't think so. But as much as I dislike the ship, the build is very good at being said ship. They even used a line bracket to connect the cockpit, which makes it look like Yoda is sitting inside piloting it, and frankly, that's too damn adorable for me to hate this. 7 out of 10. Day 20. Today brings us our 6th and final figure of the calendar, an Imperial Praetorian Guard. The exact same figure that was included twice in the past Vizsla vs. Moff Gideon set from last summer. Very devious of LEGO to complete the trio by including this guy here instead of just including all 3 in the actual set. But anyway, how's the figure itself? Well, as annoyingly derivative as the Praetorians are, which is not all LEGO's fault, so purely as a depiction of the source material, it's pretty great. I do think some arm printing would be nice, but you could say that about most figures. Some kind of cloth piece around the waist would be neat too, but I don't think it's as needed here as on some other figures. 8 out of 10. Day 21. Today's build is shockingly an actually good structure build, a Microvader's Castle, the third of its kind as an advent calendar build, if you count the sad one from 2022. And this one's about on par with the last proper one. There are some slight differences, like the last one including some suggestion of terrain and having a bit more color variation, but they are very nearly identical. I do, however, prefer this new design by a smidge. The full black with the bit of red just has the cleaner look out of the two. Some minus points here though for not including that ingenious nanotype bomber again. That thing was great. 8 out of 10. Day 22. The build of the day is the third calendar Razor Crest, the first of which being easily the weakest, while the 2 more recent versions are relatively similar in quality. I think I prefer the last one just by a little bit because of the slightly more detailed thrusters. I also think the bright light orange here stands out a bit too much at this scale, comparatively to the more subdued dark tan of the last build. In general, this new one just feels like a simplified version of the 2021 build. Still not bad by any means, but a tad more detail would have gone a long way. 6.5 out of 10. Day 23. LEGO sure does love their land speeders, this one being the 4th calendar build and the 11th overall, and that's excluding the special exclusives and foil packs, etc. But out of the calendar builds, this one's probably the best, as it should be, the only one coming even close being the previous 2022 version, which I think does have the slightly better side thruster builds. Other than that though, the proportions and even the Nano Luke and 3PO are a bit better in this one. 8 out of 10. Day 24. The final gift of the calendar is the Crimson Firehawk from the Young Jedi Adventures. What an odd build to finish off the calendar. I mean, the minikit was right there. Now, I haven't actually watched the show, because honestly, why would I? But based on the bit of research I did, this feels pretty decent. Like, the overall shape is kinda there and most of the important details have been captured, with the exception of the bubble turret up top. That's definitely something that should have been included in some form. The curve at the front also feels maybe a bit too narrow, but at this scale I'm not sure if you could do any better. Maybe one of those 3x6 half circles would have worked a bit better. Not sure. 6 out of 10. Day 25. Wait a minute. What? Okay, now that we looked at all 24 gifts, how's this year's advent calendar overall? Well, I think it's pretty good, with all builds except for one ranging from mediocre at worst to quite fantastic at best. The weakest of course being the only actually bad build, the Mandalorian Gauntlet, and the best being the iconic minikit, even with its lack of inverted tile. Surprisingly and a bit unfortunately, this calendar also includes the least amount of figures to date, with only 6 minifigs, a position previously held by 2021 at 7 figures. This is if you're being a bit more liberal with the term minifigure, including gonk droids, pit droids, etc. This fact is definitely remedied though by the fact that all 6 included figures are pretty great, the weakest being the Super Battle Droid and the strongest being Ahsoka from Ahsoka. So overall, like I said, it's a pretty damn good calendar, with stars that shine quite bright, but also a good few builds that definitely needed a bit more polish to rise above mediocrity. Now the overall score comes out to an average of 6.85 out of 10, which we're gonna go and round up to a nice 7 out of 10. And now I want to thank y'all for joining me on this journey this year, not just the calendar series, but Lightspeed LEGO Review in general. It's been a whole lot of fun to make, and I hope you've enjoyed it at least half as much as I have. There is gonna be a short break between this and the continuation of regular listeners, so don't expect anything for a minute. Uploads will probably start again sometime early January. But anyway, I'll let you go now, so for one last time, let me know your thoughts below, like and subscribe, and I hope you're having a very happy holiday and a happy coming new year. Okay, bye!